declassified U.S. telegrams, historical accounts, even a few literary mentions.
Interesting.
Our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to piece together the truth.
Sounds like a challenge. I'm in.
All right, so picture this. 1920s Colombia. Ciénaga is this town dominated by, you guessed it, banana plantations.
Makes sense.
And these plantations, they're all owned by this powerful corporation, the United Fruit Company.
A foreign corporation calling the shots? I bet that didn't sit well with everyone.
You got it.
Yeah.
Now, the workers on these plantations, they're living in pretty rough conditions. And on top of that, they're treated, well, let's just say, not so great.
Yeah, I can imagine when you have that kind of power imbalance, things can get pretty bad.
So they decided to strike. They had this list of 9 demands. Things like a 6-day work week, safer working conditions, written contracts, you know, basic stuff.
Basic dignity, really. Things we might take for granted these days.
Right. Like one of their demands was to be paid in actual cash, not
Yeah.
these company tokens that could only be used at company stores.
Ah, the company store trap. Keeps the workers indebted and dependent. We still see echoes of that today, you know?
It's true. It's like this thread connecting the past and present,
Yeah.
right? So this strike, it snowballed into the largest labor movement Colombia had ever seen at that point.
Wow, that's huge.
And various political groups, they saw an opportunity and jumped on board.
Adding fuel to the fire.
Exactly. Now, the Colombian government, instead of, negotiating or trying to find some middle ground, they decided to send in the army.
Oh, that can't be good.
And get this, they specifically told the troops not to spare ammunition.
Whoa. So they were basically going in with the intention to crush the strike, not resolve it.
Pretty much. It really makes you question, was the government acting alone, or was there pressure from the United Fruit Company?
Right. I mean, they had a lot to lose if the strike succeeded.
A lot to lose. So here we are, December 5th, 1928. It's a Sunday. People are gathered in the town square after Mass. Families, kids playing, just a normal day.
Peaceful.
Peaceful, until it wasn't. Suddenly, machine guns open fire from rooftops. It's chaos, absolute terror.
That sudden shift from peace to violence,
Yeah.
it's chilling.
It's hard to even imagine being there.
Yeah.
And to this day, there's no single agreed-upon version of what exactly went down that day. Different stories, different perspectives.
That makes it even harder to get to the truth, doesn't it?
It does. And then there's the question of the death toll. General Cortez Vargas, the guy leading the troops, he claimed only 47 people died.
It's 47.
But other estimates, based on witness accounts, historical records, they suggest it could be in the thousands.
Thousands. That's a huge discrepancy. It makes you wonder why someone would want to downplay it, you know?
Exactly. There are even stories, chilling stories, of bodies being dumped into the sea.
To hide the evidence, to erase the memory of what happened.
It's a deliberate attempt to silence the victims, isn't it? And
Yeah.
that's why we're here, doing this deep dive,
Mhm.
to uncover what they tried to bury.
To give voice to those who were silenced. Absolutely.
All right, now let's bring another player into this story, the United States. We've got these declassified U.S. telegrams, and they offer a glimpse into how the American government was viewing all of this.
Okay, what do they say?
Well, there's definitely a sense of alarm. They label the strike communist, a subversive tendency. They're clearly worried about American investments in the region.
Not surprising, given the political climate at the time, the Red Scare and all that.
Yeah. And one telegram actually requests an American warship to be sent to the area.
Whoa, seriously?
It's in the telegram, plain as day.
Yeah.
But they ultimately decide against it. Maybe they didn't want to get directly involved,
It's a delicate balance, right?
Yeah.
Wanting to protect your interests, but also not wanting to get dragged into a foreign conflict.
Right. Now, I've got a section here from a telegram sent from the Bogota Embassy to the U.S. Secretary of State on December 5th, 1928, the day of the massacre.
Okay, let's hear it.
It says, I have been following the Santa Marta fruit strike through the United Fruit Company representative here, also through the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who on Saturday told me the government would send additional troops and would arrest all strike leaders and transport them to a prison in Cartagena. What do you think about that?
It's interesting how the telegram mentions getting info directly from the United Fruit Company, right?
Yeah, like were they getting the whole story or just the company side of it?
Exactly. And the language they use, it's so cold. Additional troops, arrest all strike leaders. It's like they're talking about moving chess pieces, not human lives.
It's dehumanizing, isn't it?
Very much so. And that lack of empathy, it's kind of a running theme in these telegrams.
For sure. Here's another one sent from the Santa Marta consulate the day after the massacre. It says, feeling against the government by the proletariat, which is shared by some of the soldiers, is high, and it is doubtful if we can depend upon the Colombian government for protection. May I respectfully suggest that my request for the presence within calling distance of an American warship be granted, and that it stand off subject to my call. It is admitted that the character of the strike has changed and that the disturbance is a manifestation with a subversive tendency.
Things are heating up, right?
Yeah, now they're talking about subversive tendencies,
And invoking the specter of communism.
trying to paint the strike as a threat to American interests.
Exactly. But we're not endorsing these viewpoints, right? We're
Yeah.
just trying to understand them. And it also shows a bit of a conflict between the consul on the ground and the State Department back home. The consul's like, send a warship.
Hmm.
But the State Department ultimately says no.
Maybe a case of cooler heads prevailing, or just not wanting to risk a bigger conflict. It's hard to know for sure. Before we move on, I want to touch on one more thing. The Banana Massacre has made its way into literature.
Really? How so?
Well, authors like Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Alvaro Cepeda Zamudio, they've incorporated it into their works.
That's fascinating. It shows how deeply this event resonated in Colombian culture.
Yeah, like in 100 Years of Solitude, Garcia Marquez includes a fictionalized version of the massacre. It's not entirely accurate, but it brings the story to a wider audience.
Art imitating life, or at least reflecting it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
History isn't just textbooks and days. It's in stories, in art, in how we remember and grapple with the past.
And sometimes those stories, they can reach people in a way that facts and figures alone can't. It's about the human impact, the emotional resonance. It really goes to show you, how something that happened so long ago can still be so relevant today.
Definitely. And it's a reminder, right, that history isn't just something we read about in textbooks.
Oh, absolutely. It shapes who we are.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. The workers' demands, the massacre itself, the U.S. involvement.
Even how it's shown up in literature. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
What do you think, what are the big takeaways from all of this? What do we learn from the Banana Massacre?
Well, it's a pretty stark warning, right? About what can happen when you have unchecked corporate power
For sure.
and a government that's willing to use brutal force to silence dissent. It forces us to think about those things.
Makes you think, what's the price of progress? And who pays it?
Yeah, exactly. And it also highlights how easily things can escalate. A labor strike turns into a massacre, fueled by fear and ideology.
It's a scary thought. And when I hear about those workers just wanting to be paid in real money, not company scrip,
Right, that basic dignity.
it makes me think about all the ways workers are still exploited today. Like, are things really that different?
You know, that's a really good point. Globalization, supply chains, it's all so complex. But at the heart of it, it's still about people, their rights, their well-being.
And the Banana Massacre, it shows what can happen when those things are ignored.
When profit comes before people.
Exactly. Another thing that strikes me is how the official story tried to downplay the whole thing.
Minimizing the death toll, hiding the bodies, trying to erase what happened.
It makes you realize how easily history can be manipulated, right? And how important it is to dig deeper, to question what we're told.
Absolutely. We can't just take things at face value. We have to be critical to seek out different perspectives.
So what stands out to you as the most important lesson from all of this?
Well, for me, it's the power of collective action. The workers in Ciénaga, they were up against a powerful corporation, a government that was willing to use violence against them.
Yeah, they had everything stacked against them.
But they still stood up for what they believed in. They demanded better. And their struggle, even though it ended in tragedy, it's still inspiring.
It is. It's a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming power, people can make a difference.
That we have to keep fighting for what's right, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous. It's like their fight. It didn't end that day in the town square. It continues in all the struggles for justice that are happening right now all over the world.
Exactly. And it's our responsibility to carry that torch, to learn from the past and work towards a better future.
So where do we go from here? We've got all this information about the Banana Massacre, but it feels like there's still so many unanswered questions.
Oh, there are. The exact death toll, how much the U.S. was really involved, the motivations of the people in power.
We may never have all the answers.
But that doesn't mean we stop searching. That's the nature of history, right? It's an
Yeah.
ongoing process.
It's like a puzzle, and we're still putting the pieces together. But each piece we find, it brings us closer to understanding the bigger picture.
And that understanding, it can help us make sense of the world we live in today.
This deep dive, it's been a journey, hasn't it? Into a dark chapter of history, but also into ourselves, into how we think about power, about justice, about the stories we tell ourselves about the past. It's about making those connections, right, between then and now, and realizing that history isn't just something that happened a long time ago.
It's still unfolding all around us,
Yeah.
and we're part of it.
We all have a role to play.
It's crazy, right, how this one event, the Banana Massacre,
Mhm.
it connects to so many bigger issues.
Yeah, it's like you said, holding up a mirror to the past, but you see the present reflected back.
Exactly. Thinking about those workers demanding fair wages, safe conditions, basic dignity.
Yeah,
It's like those are things we still fight for today.
absolutely. And it's easy to forget how hard won those rights are, how fragile.
And the Banana Massacre, it's a stark reminder of what happens when people in power push back violently.
When profit trumps human life, when they try to silence the voices speaking out against injustice.
It's a chilling thought. It makes me wonder, if those who died in Sinaga, those whose voices were silenced, if they could speak to us now, what would they say?
Hmm. It's a powerful question. Maybe they'd urge us to learn from their struggle, to recognize those same patterns of exploitation, the injustice. It's still happening.
Yeah, to see it clearly and not look away.
And to never, ever take our own rights for granted. The things we have, they were fought for.
They'd probably remind us that staying silent, it's not an option. It's almost like being complicit, right?
In a way, yeah. And that every single one of us, we have a role to play in making things more just.
Creating a world where something like the Banana Massacre could never happen again.
Exactly. I think they'd want us to remember, even against such overwhelming power, in the darkest times, the fight for justice, it has to continue.
It's a powerful message, a legacy they leave behind. That spirit of resistance, it lives on.
And it's a message that goes beyond just this one event. It speaks to all the struggles for justice happening right now all over the world.
And that's what we need to carry with us as we move forward. Not just as we remember the past, but as we face the challenges of the present.
Absolutely. Learning from history, it's not just about knowing what happened. It's about using that knowledge to create a better future.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to honor the memory of those who lost their lives in Sinaga. Their struggle, their sacrifice, it can't be forgotten.
And it shouldn't be. It's part of a larger story, one that's still being written, and we're all a part of that.
This deep dive, it's been a journey, a difficult one at times, but an important one.
It's forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths.
About power, about injustice, about the human cost of greed and indifference,
But it's also shown us the resilience of the human spirit
the power of collective action.
and the enduring hope for a more just and equitable world.
We've learned a lot from the Banana Massacre, more than just facts and dates.
It's about the stories we tell, the lessons we carry with us.
And I hope for our listeners, this deep dive has been eye-opening, thought-provoking, maybe even a little bit inspiring.
To keep asking questions, to keep pushing for change.
Because ultimately, history is not just something that happened in the past. It's alive, it's unfolding, and we have a responsibility to shape the chapters to come. So thank you guys for listening, and happy listening to all your favorite podcasts and YouTube channels.
Until next time.
See ya.